I've been playing this game lately. I've been reading a lot about it online, and apparently, Naomi, there were a lot of characters that the creators were like, "Oh, this will be fun," and then they actually made some like mock-ups of them, and it turned out that they were terrible characters.
Yes,
that they were just not fun. They were weird. They were maybe like obscure, and so they got rid of them, right? So, like for example, this is the dumbest bit ever created, right? So, for example. The Bokoblin is an actual enemy that you will encounter. It's like a little these are in all these fantasy things. It's like a little orc type thing, right? And the makers were like, before they settled on the Bokoblin, they had a bunch of different prototypes, including the Bokoblin, which is it has the head of Richard Lewis, and it attacks you with a juice box.
Yep.
Now, if you don't know, this is why they rejected this. But if you remember, you might remember in the 1980s, comedian Richard Lewis, who you might know from Curb Your Enthusiasm, very popular in the 1980s, was the spokesman for a juice box for adults
called Boku.
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 Called Boku. So you can
see your name in all caps. And then Palm Crash said you're challenging the U.S. to nuke within its borders.
Now, there's another enemy in Zelda Breath of the Wild called the Wizrobe. And the makers got a little saucy originally. And they had a character called the Piss Robe, which threw urine samples at you. Now, again, you can see why this perhaps did not make it into the final game. Hey, look.
Do you see how I live? This why Mabel left. Mabel left.
Blame the makers of Zelda, not me. I'm just bringing this to you.
Reiko says its own urine samples.
No, it steals them. It steals them from, and this is why it's such a bad person. Because it steals the urine samples from a medical facility. That person, for all we know, has diabetes, and they'll never know.
Breezy's worried about you.
Now, there's a bat-like creature with one eye called a Keese.
Okay.
That did make it into the final game. All right. But the Ed Keese did not. Now, in the 1980s, there was a far right-wing Republican who was part of the Reagan administration named Ed Meese. Now, one of the larger characters in Zelda Breath of the Wild is called a Hinox.
Sorry, I was just communicating with Jackie. Go ahead.
Jackie said, blink twice if you need help, Naomi. I assume you only blinked once because this is great. Hold on. Hold the fuck on, everyone. I said this bit could collapse reality. I'm not here being like, and I also I didn't make any of these characters up. I found them all online. Blame the creators of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Right.
So
So Hinox is a real thing.
Giant character in the.
Yep.
You gotta shoot it in its eye, and then you gotta attack its legs.
Okay.
All right, but originally, I feel this is a little bit like, maybe you guys are like kind of crossing the line here. There was also Rabbi High Knox.
Oh, is it a talus?
I didn't put a talus on him. That is how the creators of the game envisioned him. He attacks you with flaming Toras.
Oh God!
Of course, classic Zelda enemy, the Octorok. Correct. We all know the Octorok. Octorok shoots little boulders at you.
All right. Joe Henry.
And then one of the original characters that they rejected was the FX Presents the Sex, Drugs, and Octo-Rock and Roll. Now, if you remember, this was what lasted maybe 2 seasons on FX. Was a show starring Dennis Leary called Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. And I guess the makers of Zelda were either fans or they thought they could capitalize on. Maybe they liked John Landgraf, who's the president of FX. I'm not sure. I just know that they created a character with a kind of a Dennis Leary type face.
Dennis Leary has had not one but 2 television shows?
He's had like 30.
That's some bullshit. Go on here. Go ahead.
Of course, the Moblin, which is
Yep.
kind of like a giant goblin type character.
Me
kinda-
too, Astrid. Go ahead. Astrid on the edge of psychosis. Go ahead. Moblin.
Okay. And now one of the rejected ones was the Italian Moblin, who...
The work it took to Photoshop this Andrew. It's not something you did. You found it.
Thank you.
It's not something you
Thank
did.
you.
You
I just
found
did a
it. You
Google
found
search.
it. You found it. Callie goes, okay, I like the Italian Moblin. Callie's on board.
Got a little Tommy gun, a mustache, and a one of those mobster type hats.
Palm Crash says Andy's a love child of Marshall McLuhan and Lovecraft, and all we can do is succumb to the Eldritch
please.
puns.
Yes, please do not say I'm Lovecrafted in any way. That fucking freak. Okay, and finally, one of the most difficult characters to beat in the game is called a Lionel.
Lionel.
It's this kind of like centaur type thing. But at least you didn't have to fight the Lionel Richie, which could also dance on the ceiling, as well as attack you with a crossbow.
Come back from doing work, women's lasers. Come back.
Hey, we're all still here. It didn't collapse reality.
Still here.
And that, of course, everyone, was Rejected, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.